Educate, inspire, change. Educate yourself, inspire others, change the world. So hello and welcome to my podcast. Today I have the privilege of welcoming Marc Angelo Copolla, a philanthropreneur, the founder of Valhalla Farms and Superhero Academy. Me and Marc have been friends from some time and we decided to have a podcast together. We feel it's been it's the right timing to have a conversation, and I want to really deep dive, find out what you're doing, Marc, find out what drives you, find out your passions, and just let's see where the conversation flows.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.
Beautiful. So for all the listeners that don't know you, give me a bit of your background. Who are you? What inspires you? And what led you to creating Valhalla Farms and Superhero Academy?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a story, and I would say that I'm definitely a storyteller in many ways, and that's what I'm definitely passionate about. But it wasn't always the case. You know, for me, it's kind of the story that led to both of those things and both of those projects being birthed into my own life really starts with the dissociation that I started to have with the traditional education system. Right, I basically followed the path, followed what my parents were told me to do, and it worked for them, right? I mean, they're immigrants from Italy that came to Canada that essentially followed the kind of traditional path, went to school, did all of this stuff, and found success, and essentially, lived the American or the North American dream, if you want to call it that, right? But as I kind of went through school, I kind of started to learn more about what I didn't want to do with my life, studying finance and accounting and all of these things, and I kind of recognized this deep inherent passion that I had for entrepreneurship. And so as I graduated from university, I ended up committing to watching a documentary a week, every single week for 52 weeks straight, because I didn't want to let schooling get in the way of my education. And I wanted to kind of learn about the alternative. And I had already started to see, kind of cracks in the mainstream narrative, or the kind of the mainstream path, I want to say, to success, and whatever that looks like and how that's defined. And so as I start watching these documentaries, huge shifts start happening internally for me. And beyond just like the context of like what I was learning in each documentary, whether it be the vanishing of the bees or peak oil, or, all the problems with climate change, or problems with, the prison industrial system, or money, or where money comes from, all of these different things. The biggest thing that started to stand out for me is that I realized that after every one of these documentaries, for the most part, I always felt really small. I always felt like they were spending 95% of the time talking about the problem and very little time talking about the solution. And so over time, this kind of data, so some data started coming my way about, like, for every article that there is about the solution to climate change, for example, there are 80 that talk about the problem. And so this 80-to-1 ratio of like us talking about the negative versus really embodying the solutions kind of triggered and set in motion a sense of desperation as I started to learn more and more every single week, and learn more about the world. And so in that kind of this almost a fit of rage, but also some level of depression and anxiety and fear, I decided that I was going to kind of walk out into the middle of a GMO corn and soya field that I didn't own, but I knew was for sale, and planted a fruit tree, planted a tree, and declared I would build the school I wish I could have gone to, both physically and digitally. And so that's the merger of this project. I mean, it turned into Valhalla Farms. I didn't know, and I didn't call it that at the beginning. And I knew nothing about farming. I knew nothing about, eco building. I knew nothing about solar panels or the alternative. I knew nothing about what this would really lead to. I'd never really planted anything in my life. I mean, sure, my nana or my grandmother had a garden, and so my grandparents on the other side, and so on and so forth. But I just kind of dove headfirst into this world, and I started to learn a little bit more about ecosystems. And over time, as I kind of was able to find a ton of success and start documenting and sharing the story and all of these different things, it kind of naturally fell into my awareness that many ecovillages that are built around the globe, and when I talk about an eco-village, I mean kind of an intentional community, a group of people coming together to live in community, to live in harmony with nature in some way, shape, or form. And many of them have their own, deviations as to what their core values or fundamental principles or pillars or beliefs are. What I learned is that most eco-villages were surviving and making more money off of teaching what they knew and teaching some of the things that they had created and done in their lessons, rather than like the production of things like tomatoes, for example, right? And so I just realized the symbiotic nature of my kind of skill set and my passions, which are storytelling, making content, building, beautiful sets and making podcasts and all of this kind of stuff, and the world that I understood and how I was paying my bills, kind of running marketing agencies and essentially supporting brands that matter online. And then the education side of things. And so that's where Valhalla Farms and our eco village that we're building there and Superhero Academy, which is an online school that trains entrepreneurs to kind of go through this pattern of understanding what it takes to tell a story online, what it takes to build a brand, and what it takes to merge the ROI of return on investment, which obviously is incredibly important if you have to pay your bills and it's going to be, a sustainable income in the current paradigm, in the current system, and the other ROI of ripple of impact. And that's really what Valhalla, and that's what Superhero Academy, that's what me, and that's what even the word philanthropreneur in my mind means. It means that you're building something, you're creating something that is of value, that is tradable, that is a service or a product or something that actually matters, and you're doing it with the ecosystem, with impact, with social, context in mind, right? And it's just been a beautiful journey. And I've been now an entrepreneur for 13 years, and I've been running Valhalla Farms for 8, and Superhero Academy, I think yesterday was our 5-year anniversary, or 5 or 6 year anniversary or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's been a journey.
Yeah, Mark. So it sounds like you've been on an epic journey, and a lot of what you said resonates deeply with me because creating the platform Educate, Inspire, Change, I've always been kind of torn with that battle between making money and sharing content that makes a difference, because it's hard to find a good balance between what drives you, what keeps you going. We all need to make money in order to grow successful businesses, but it's about keeping those businesses in alignment with like the environment, providing real value to the end user and making the world a better place, So with Educate, Inspire, Change, for example, the content I share, I always like to share content that increases the consciousness of the end reader. But often those kinds of articles or those kind of videos aren't the ones that go viral, Quite often you can share an article about a cute animal running down a beach and it'll get millions of shares and millions of likes, So it's about finding that balance between creating content and doing things that matters and creating content and doing things that make money, So I think with what you're doing with both your Superhero Academy and Valhalla Farms, seems to have hit a nerve there. So give me a bit more insight into both those businesses. What does Valhalla Farms, what specifically does it do? Just so I can understand better.
Yeah, so I mean, Valhalla was originally a giant GMO corn and soya field. So it was literally a whole lot of nothing. Years and years and years of pesticides and Monsanto-esque, and probably actually Monsanto chemicals and essentially production of food, corn and soya specifically. And we're basically turning it's an experiment into what it would look like to use the principles of permaculture, for example, or the principles of market gardening, and essentially build an ecosystem that replicates in the same way that a forest would, our capacity to build and grow food within kind of the homestead context. And then what would it look like if we did that, trying to build a community of 150 people? And the reason why 150 people is around some studies that I had found around Dunbar's number, what is known as Dunbar's number, which is studies that looked at Native American tribes and at what scale would these tribes start to kind of lose trust with one another? At what point would they fracture and turn from one tribe into 2 smaller tribes, for example? And what the studies tended to show was that about at 150 people, we can maintain trust and connection with about 150 people at any one moment in our life. So what would it look like if we intentionally chose to live and co-create and share a neighborhood with 150 people? And what if we didn't all have to own a ladder, for example? And the reason I say a ladder is it's because it's a simple tool that we use maybe once or twice a year, every once in a while. And yet, the way our current economic system is set up, the way our current community is set up, is that we all have to own everything for ourselves. We all have to have it in our garage. Therefore, we have to have bigger houses to store these things and so on and so forth. Yet in truth, that's a consumeristic mindset that is not necessarily taking into account the environment, nor the economics, nor the capacity for just having more empowerment when you have less stuff. And so I used to always think man, if all of my neighbors on my street, if we all chipped in and we bought the better lawnmower, we can rotate rather than all of us having to cut our grass every single week. What if we just like upgraded and we all work together? Right. And so this kind of communal mindset was always this curiosity that I had, even when I was a kid doing chores at my, my parents' house. But as it kind of aged into it, I said, well, what would it look like to really build an eco village? What would it look like to build like an off-grid community? And I say off-grid not because I want to step away from the current system in full. I mean, in fact, Valhalla is a 80 plus acre farm 20 minutes outside of downtown Montreal. So I'm sitting in the old Port of Montreal right now. This is where I'm located. It's 20 minutes away from here. It's literally bordering suburbia. So people's like $1 million homes in their backyards is our farm. And so we have this capacity of proving that we can take farmland, which is grossly undervalued in many ways, right next to land that is grossly overvalued in many ways due to the real estate dynamics and the way that our economic system works, and make it a lot of the same, but also have it be incredibly empowering and different. Right? Like, what would it look like if we can walk outside into our parks and find food everywhere, right? Rather than just trees that they plant for decorative purposes. What if they were growing kale on the side of the road? Or what if they were growing fruit trees on the side of the highway? I mean, there's so much opportunity and there's so much food waste. There's so many challenges that are happening. And for me, it just felt like that was like the core fundamental element of what we needed to see more of in our world, that we needed to kind of localize a little bit more. Right. And we needed to know our neighbors more. We needed to share more. We needed to kind of co-create and find values that we can hold dear and near to ourselves more. And Superhero Academy is the kind of the vehicle that helps people be empowered enough to live a life aligned between their passions and their income. Right. So how can I help mentor people through the shift that it takes for them to come to and participate in this community and even be able to kind of afford joining this in some way, shape, or form? And I say afford not just from a financial perspective, but also from a time and energy perspective, right? So many people live in condos. So many people live in an environment where they have kids or a car and all these different things. I understand, right? They have their bills to pay and they have to show up in these different ways. And so when after all of that is said and done, for the most part, they don't really have enough time, energy, money, whatever it is, to essentially invest in these kind of shifts and changes. But if we're doing this as a group, we start to recognize that there is a kind of an economies of scale where we don't all need a tractor. We don't all need a ladder. We don't all need a drill. And so if we can build a common kind of space where this community can physically live, but also digitally live, right? Can we build a common studio like this one, for example, that many people can use to make this content, to empower themselves, to learn the skills that it takes to be either a digital nomad or really great at Facebook ads, or really great content creator or videographer, or whatever it is that they're really excited about, right? Whatever their art is, whatever their passion is. Superhero Academy to me is teaching people the fundamental steps of that entrepreneurial or that freelancer or that kind of influencer journey, if you want to see it that way, right? So what can you do to self-empower? What can help fund or fuel or change or create that transition into this lifestyle of communal living, into this lifestyle that is in line with your own passions and the ecosystem around us? And for me, it still is an experiment in that. It's still in progress of me learning what it takes to be a farmer, right? I knew nothing about it, and I've learned over time. And like any other job that you're kind of self-empowered and self-generating, there's a lot of skills you have to learn when it comes to law and finance and like all these different elements that I think are incredibly, incredibly difficult for people to navigate. And so I just kind of created a trail of breadcrumbs from my own experience as well as the experience of other people that they can follow and that is very actionable, it's very tangible, it's very real. It holds nothing back. And that's the merger of what we do both physically at Valhalla and digitally with Superhero Academy.
Beautiful. So I just want to understand a little bit better about Valhalla Farms. So currently this is 80, did you say 80 acres?
80 plus acres. Yeah.
And do people live there just now?
So nobody technically lives there, and I'll say that from a legal perspective. But look, we have farm managers. There are certain, like me and another person are like kind of full-time farm manager, and we have other people and lots of volunteers that are supporting. And then this year, we are actually I'm the final stages of applying for the permits to build a first house. And the first house is a place I will live, but also it's going to be kind of a communal house. It's meant to have it's going to have a full film studio so we can create content and tell stories. It's going to be kind of like an entrepreneurial gathering or philanthropreneur gathering for people. And it's also going to be a farmhouse. It's going to have all the equipment and all the necessary tooling to be able to transform, create food, produce all kinds of stuff, start seedlings, wash the food, you name it, what all the processes that we need for the farm. So it's a living, breathing incubator, if you want to see it that way, both for plants and for people. And I think they're kind of one and the same. They're we both, just like plants need water and sun, people need kind of mentors and support. You know what I mean? And so that's exactly what we're creating.
Beautiful. The more I hear you speak, the timing of this podcast is just like so synchronistic, you know, because I happen to be waiting for the borders to open to move to Costa Rica, and my long-term plan is to live in a sustainable community. So I think like all this knowledge and wisdom that you're passing on to me just now, it's given me so many ideas, so much inspiration. The concept of having a workspace that can be shared is really, really beautiful to me, and sharing all these items and goods, like you mentioned, ladders and lawnmowers. It's given me so much inspiration for potentially building my own community one day, or moving into a community. And I think we have a friend in common. I interviewed Stephen Brooks a while ago, who owns he owns an amazing retreat in Costa Rica called Punta Mona, as well as a couple of other villages. And he's a real great example of what can be done once you put your mind to it. You know, his farms are absolutely out of this world. And he was recently featured on Netflix. Did you have a chance to watch that episode?
I did. I know. I mean, look, Stephen Brooks is a dear friend of mine. I actually hosted through Superhero Academy some mastermind events where I brought together amazing entrepreneurs, heart-centered entrepreneurs from all over the globe. And we did two events at Punta Mona, and then moved people from Punta Mona all the way to an Envision, which is a festival that embodies many of the same values he's also a co-founder of. So Stephen and I go way back. I've brought hundreds of people to Punta Mona, and even literal, superstars, people, A-list celebrities, of all kinds of people I've brought there. And so I remember when he filmed with Zac Efron, he had told me the whole thing and the whole story. So yeah, I did watch it, and it's amazing to watch them grow now because of it. I love it.
That's beautiful. And so so you're just at the start of your journey really with Valhalla Farms, in that you've built this farm and you're now looking for the permits to have your own house. So long term, what's your plan for Valhalla Farms? You want this to be replicated? So you want to not sell, but give the blueprint almost to other people to do their own communities?
Totally. I mean, look, the way I see it is, the way I see it is that the 80 acres is kind of it's the perfect size farm for about 30 homes or about 150 people, right? So if you kind of like divide that up, you would have about 2 acres per home. So it creates enough of a homestead where each home and each homestead can kind of financially be viable doing market gardening and essentially growing food in their own backyard. And then there's kind of like a common space where there's common infrastructure, a community center, common places to even common cars. I think in the future, we're not all going to own cars, for example. We'll have self-driving Teslas, for example, that we can all kind of co-own and co-use through the apps and through technology and all these different things, right? So a large chunk of the farm, about 20 acres or so, is kind of communal. And then about the other 60 or so is these 30 homes that are these individual homesteads. And in the same way that you're paying like condo fees and participating in that, it's like each lot or each farm, kind of when they're purchased by members of the community that are kind of approved through a process, they're contributing to the infrastructure of the communal space and of the communal tooling. And then, maybe there's a month-to-month fee or membership, or there's a scenario where they grow the food, but then we help sell it for them. Or in other cases, sometimes maybe they're too old or they're too young, or they're maybe not so great at farming, but they're great accountants. So we farm their land for them and then give them a share of the scenario of the profits of the land or the food that's grown on their farm, so on and so forth. We're basically adopting a co-op model. And the way I see it is this first house and this first 5-acre piece, where I'm building the house, right now, is it's the incubator. It is our nursery, if you will. So we've planted hundreds of fruit trees, hundreds of berry bushes, planted all kinds of genetics from all over the globe, but very specifically lots of genetics that grow obviously and are very native to this area in Montreal. And then we're propagating those and making more and more garden beds so we could start more and more farms. And we have the capacity to essentially, with the plants that we've planted now, as they mature in age, to be able to propagate and literally, you know, in the same way that they print money, well, we're replicating nature. We're replicating many of the companion planting and many of the elements of what it would take to literally physically take responsibility for building the solution. And I say the solution, a solution. It's a solution for us. It's a solution for the lifestyle that we have. And there's so many reasons why I think this is incredibly impactful beyond just the farming component and where your food comes from and all this stuff. I think it's actually the most financially viable real estate you can buy, and it's the biggest opportunity for gains. I believe that carbon taxes are going to become a thing. They've already passed in Canada, and it's going to be a huge tax on society and in people who are not producing or carbon negative, let's say. And in our case, we're going to be sequestering carbon. It's a huge solution for climate change. It's a huge solution for food security. It's a huge solution when things like the virus go out and into huge pandemics all of a sudden spring up. It's a huge solution for so many different layers of poverty and justice and challenges around the globe. It's a huge solution for alternative education. So there's all these different layers of what I think a community really takes. And I always say, you hear the term like it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to build a village. We need a village worth of talent, of people who are hiring each other, working together. And they don't all have to like each other. They don't have to have the exact same political views, or there's no dogma around some sort of religion or anything of that nature. This is just people who are intentionally living together and also having their own private space and their own private capacity to build a family or to live in accordance to whatever their own personal beliefs are. And so it's just, how can we build better systems of coordination? Like, how can we just know each other better? And we have these systems of coordination in our society today. Like, we all stop at red lights, or we all put our garbage out on Wednesdays, or whatever it is. But the difference is we've dissociated ourselves from these things, and we've dissociated ourselves from elements of the ecosystem, because when we do put out our garbage, for us, it's gone, but it's not gone, right? And so this idea that one of the stats that really hit me very powerfully is Global Footprint Network. They kind of study what it would take if everyone lived like the average American or the average Canadian or the average European or whatever it is, right? And when I learned that if everyone lived like the average American, we would need 4.1 planets to survive. And then when I learned that from the average Canadian's perspective, because we have such a massive country, and from a per capita perspective, we would need 5 planets to survive. When I learned that, I was flabbergasted. I just, there's nothing I had to do something about it. And so Valhalla is just that. It's that sandbox. Have we figured it all out? No. Have we made a ton of mistakes? Yes. Are we still making mistakes? Yes. But we've definitely made a lot of beautiful things happen, and now it's thriving. It's starting to look like the beginning seeds of what Punta Mona looks like, which Punta Mona has been around for 24 years. Our farm was, and at least it was in a tropical jungle-like area. It was a cacao farm before that. In our case, it was devastation. It was literally nothing growing. And that was 8 years ago. Now it's becoming a full-on ecosystem. I mean, we're seeing the return of everything, from hummingbirds to bats to bugs to snakes to rabbits to ducks. The entire ecosystem has restored itself through the work that we're doing. It's laborious. It's challenging. It's the game of patience. I mean, one of the hardest businesses on the planet to start is being a farmer of any kind. We grossly underestimate and we grossly underappreciate those who make our food. But I think that's changing, and I'm excited about it.
Beautiful. I have a really great respect for what you're doing. I think it's such important work. How would somebody like me get involved? How would somebody like me be able to support your project with Valhalla? Like, are you open to people connecting with you and helping you sustain, grow this community?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, one of the things I learned building Valhalla is that the best, somebody said this to me at one point, I can't remember who, but they basically said churches every Sunday. And Valhalla's not a church, but we are a communal space and a gathering. And so every Saturday, for example, we have an open door policy. Anybody could come and volunteer. And in fact, almost everything at Valhalla has been done by volunteers. It's really come out of it came out of the fact that I went there, planted a tree, took an Instagram picture. My first ever Instagram picture was me on a tractor at the farm. And then soon after, some of the trees and other things that we were doing. And then I just documented the story, and it turned into something massive. We learned I started making memes online. This was before anybody was really making memes. And it was the beginnings of like pages that I know, like Collective Evolution and other things, Educate, Inspire, Change. We created like a wave of people making this kind of content and this kind of stuff. And that empowered us greatly. And so people have gotten involved in every different way. I mean, whether it be helping us online, doing social media or creating content or making videos or stories. People have also come in person and learned farming and planted stuff. Sometimes they're just out there helping us pull weeds or pull out the garlic out of the ground and help us dry it. I mean, there's 1,001 different ways that that's happening, but I know that I think I'm going to be able to take this to a whole other level the second we build this first house, because then I can receive people. I can house people. I can host big dinners without necessarily always being outside. And so we built an outdoor kitchen. We're growing more and more food. So the empowerment is kind of stepping itself up over and over and over again. We're really getting more and more capable of let's say receiving more people, and it's getting more and more comfortable. And but like I said, it's been built by the work of many, many, many volunteers, many, many, many neighbors, many, many arborists even, who just come and, you know, they're cleaning up trees that are dead or touching power lines. They go and then they have to normally go to the dump and pay to dump all these wood chips. Well, instead they bring it to our farm and we use it in our ecosystem. We put them on the paths, or we make garden beds out of it. We're preparing new, like literally I am working on things today that I know I'm only going to be touching in 3 years. And that's so rare. I think that's the core thing that like people can start investing in. And the fastest way you can get involved in Valhalla is to actually get involved in your own life. And what that means or what that looks like, I think in the fundamental principle is sustainability is not just a thing you buy. It's not a product. It's not, oh, I use reusable bags. I compost. So now I'm sustainable. It's actually a mindset and a lifestyle. And to me, that mindset is most embodied through the idea of long-term thinking. I think we're currently in a paradigm where everything is short-term. Everything is the headline. We're scrolling online. We're constantly looking for the next inspiration, the next motivation, the next kind of thing. And it's this dopamine hit that we're kind of constantly getting through social media, through the internet, through just this kind of like convenience economy, I want to say, right? And the truth is that the most epic of things that we see in our world, all the places where people go to for tourism, all the places where we marvel and look back at history and gawk and awe, were all done with much longer term visions and much longer term roadmaps in mind. And so to me, following a longer term perspective and adopting a long term mindset in your own life is Valhalla. And even the name Valhalla, which comes from Norse mythology, which essentially is referring to the Vikings, their whole philosophy was that they would go to their version of heaven, their version of Asgard or Valhalla, essentially, where they would go and train for the Battle of Armageddon, meaning the battle of good versus evil. But they only got there through death if they lived a noble life. And so what does a noble life look like or mean? Well, I'm not here to define that. I'm here to only define it for me and what that looks like. And to set some ideals and some standards for what I'm involved in. But Valhalla really has all of these different things built into it. And so we're accepting, you know, entrepreneurs, artists, creatives, influencers of all types, shapes and types and forms and kinds, as long as they're willing to really, truly be in integrity with themselves, integrity with the nature, and then in integrity with each other, right? Like how can they build relationships and really co-create and communicate well and do all of these different things. And over time, we've just been able to build a community both digitally and physically, and it's working.
Whilst in Costa Rica last year, I came across a guy by the name of Anthony Walsh who handed me a bottle of hemp extract CBD oil. And after just taking a few drops, I was sold. I immediately felt more relaxed, less stressed. I found the quality of my sleep improved, and it even helped me with my meditation practices. The reason this product stands out for me was Anthony himself is passionate about healing the world one person at a time and has personally invested thousands of hours researching CBD and cannabinoids in order to fully understand how to help guide others to receive the maximum benefits of taking hemp oil extracts. His company is called Eco Life Supplements, and I highly recommend it to anyone that wants to have a better, happier and healthier life. It's 100% natural, organically grown, all natural and non-GMO guaranteed for your best experience. To order yours now, please visit ecolifesupplements.com and quote coupon code INSPIRECHANGE for a 10% discount, and they are currently only delivering in the US. Epic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting with you more after this podcast and seeing how maybe I can contribute in some way. It's really inspiring to hear the work you've done, and I'm really on board with the vision that you have. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, because I think this pandemic has made it very, very clear that the world is not living in the right way, and in actual fact, the way we used to live in the olden days, in small communities, small villages, this seems to be the most productive way for us to live and exist as humans. We're not designed to live in cities with high-rise story flats and populations of millions and millions of people all condensed into a small place. It just doesn't make sense. And living in community, living in harmony with nature is completely the way to go. And I'm really glad to be doing this podcast with you today, because it's certainly lighting a fire under me, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you go with it. I'm also interested to know, we spoke briefly about Superhero Academy and how this can empower people to become their own leaders, and to get involved with Valhalla. So the Superhero Academy kind of feed Valhalla. Is that what you're trying to do? Are you trying to empower people to become their own leaders so they can rely on themselves, so they can perhaps live in their own communities?
Exactly that. Basically, Superhero Academy was born out of the lessons I learned building Valhalla to begin with, essentially, right? It's like, what shifts did I have to make? What did I have to learn about self-discipline? Like, for example, I work from here, right? I work from home. I live here. But that means that every day I don't have a boss. That means every day I have to, I have to find my own motivation. I have to be disciplined. I have to do time management well. I have to pay my own bills. I have to understand finance. I have to understand marketing. I have to understand web development. I have to understand blah, 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 blah. And here's what I'll say about the olden days and the way that things used to work and still work today when you're thinking about the most effective, people on the planet, is mentorship is the way. The most empowering education that we can create is finding the right mentors who have walked the path before us and following in their footsteps, and then taking what they taught us and adding layers upon it, and even innovating and using the new technologies and new, things that are coming out to essentially enhance that further and further and further. Now, sometimes you're going to go to the wrong way. Sometimes you're going to get the wrong mentorship. Sometimes even with all the mentorship in the world, you might fail. But I truly believe that mentorship and community and support is the number one way that we can shift our own energy and our own opportunities into following our own highest excitements and bliss and passions. And so for me, Superhero Academy is it very fundamentally breaks down what it's like to be a social entrepreneur. And that covers so many layers. It's everything from okay, what does it look like to build a presence online? What does it look like to build brand? I mean, I've done crowdfunding campaigns to raise millions of dollars. How did I do it? What worked? What didn't? I've built online communities like Superhero Academy that have hundreds of thousands of followers that reach millions of people every month. How did I do that? Right. And it's not just about how I did it. It's also about the team. What do I learn from all of these different people? And so I've spent years and years and years cultivating my own entrepreneurial journey and my own, pathway. And every day I still have to recommit to that, because it's a lifestyle. Being an entrepreneur or a creative or an artist of any kind is a lifestyle. And so learning the confines of that lifestyle while building a community that supports that, and building all the tools necessary and showing up and building that community is really what I'm looking to do. And for me, it's very important that it's kind of both physical and digital, that there's kind of a bridge between that, and that it's edutainment, that it's focused not only on here's the information, which you could have Googled, but you don't know what to Google, and it needs to be entertaining and engaging. It needs to be captivating. It needs to be told in visually appealing ways. There's so many different, for me, it's an art. And I just hope, and I know it's already happened many, many, many times with the hundreds and thousands of students and people who have gone through some form of our content or online courses, that it's incredibly impactful. And so now now what's beautiful about Superhero Academy is it's turning into a multi-teacher online school. So we have a course on Facebook ads, for example, done and taught by a Facebook ad specialist who spends millions and millions of dollars for conscious communities. And, he helped decriminalize mushrooms in Denver, for example, through Facebook ads. So it's, amazing story, amazing course there. We have Garrett, who did an apprenticeship with me and was I was his mentor for many years, but then he became a social media genius and literally is more equipped and more powerful at social media than even I am anymore. Right. And even though he learned from me and with me, right. And we learned together. And so now he is a social media course. I have a course called Passionate Profit. And all of that is just teaching people the fundamentals of the space and of the specific skill sets that they want to learn. And I see it as kind of it's almost like master class, but masterclass focus on kind of this A-list celebrity and kind of the theory a lot. We are really focused on like the where's the meat on the bone kind of thing. Like where's the rubber meet the road, and really supporting people through the journey, not just giving them the information in a pretty way.
Yeah. So I'm interested, you provide courses through Superhero Academy.
Yep.
Do you also provide one-on-one support? Like, would you do a live call with somebody?
Yeah, I do a lot of one-on-one mentorship. I do some group mentorship calls, group calls. I've run masterminds where we have groups of people coming together. So it's a little bit of everything. I mean, there's the digital component, which it makes it as accessible as possible, and that allows me to lower the price and essentially, kind of create. It's like the fruit tree of online education, let's say, versus the tomato plant. But then, yes, I do support people one-on-one in their journey. And in many scenarios, sometimes it's helping people build a movement. Sometimes it's helping people build a business. Sometimes it's helping people transition from being an entrepreneur that is living kind of more of a standard life into being a philanthropreneur that is living in community or building community. So I've worked with a ton of different people all around the globe, many big names, many of which some people know, many big brands of which a lot of people know. But yeah, it's just been a beautiful, beautiful journey.
Yeah, it sounds it. And I think that, like, following this pandemic, when things are slowly starting to settle, and I think when the dust settles, a lot of people are going to be questioning, their priorities in life. They'll be looking at their job, they'll be looking at where they live, how they're living, what are they eating. And I think perhaps the modalities that you offer will be more in demand now than ever, because more and more people are going to be looking to go off grid and looking to learn how can they make their own money, how can they become their own boss. So I think you can expect certainly more and more interest in the coming weeks and months even.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's already happened. It's already happened to some degree, and I think it's only going to continue to happen as things, this kind of pandemic situation in the end is horrible, and as it is actually way less horrible than it could have been. And I think that there's so many layers of this that are going to continue to play out, whether it be wildfires or displacements due to climate change, whether we have a war breakout between two superpowers like China and America. I mean, look, I don't want to get political about any of this stuff, but the idea here is that there are going to be more crises, and in every crisis comes the need for community. I mean, that's how we got out of the Great Depression, for example. Now, we did that both through community and then through war, and unfortunately, both will probably happen again. As much as we think we learn from history, I do believe that we are in many ways repeating a lot of the same things that led to previous world wars. And so we're at a very important junction, I believe. And, I was lucky to have started 8 years ago on this particular path. So I'm incredibly empowered in it. And now I'm like at the point where the first fruit trees we planted are now finally creating their first fruit. So that's super exciting, but yet this year I planted, I think 26 fruit trees that for the next 5 years, I probably have no fruit from, you know what I mean? But then there'll be abundance of fruit. And that's the mentality that's missing. That's what's there. And I think that's what we teach more than anything at Valhalla and Superhero Academy is that, we don't always have to follow the same thought patterns, the same logic, the same financial distribution around things that most people are following all the time. And so that logic, when you shift your mindset and when you have real mentors and you have people who have walked the path before you, then they instill confidence in the kind of the long-term pathway that you need to take. And they instill confidence when those lows come in, and most people tend to quit. And so, I say this to all the time at Superhero Academy. I said, it's not just about the knowledge. It's about putting that knowledge into action. That's where real wisdom is, right? And so we're here to help you embody that wisdom. And, I always use the example of like two people walk into the gym on January 1st, right? One person buys a normal gym pass, $50. They have access to all the equipment and they can go on YouTube and learn everything they need to be fit and have six-pack abs, for example, right? And yet only 1% of the world has six-pack abs. But a second person walks into the gym on January 1st and they pay $500 a month, right? To now have a gym pass, but also a personal trainer who works with them X number of times a week, right? Who do you bet on? Right? Who do you think is going to have six-pack abs? Who's going to be still going to the gym come March 1st or come December 31st, right? And my answer is they both had the same knowledge. They both had the same the access to the same information. They both had access to the same equipment, but who would I bet on? if I were to bet on from the third party perspective. And then the even better question, a more confronting question sometimes is, who are you? Right? Which one are you? Are you really betting on this kind of stuff? Are you learning from the mentors like I am, like Stephen Brooks, who you mentioned at Punta Mona? The reason I hosted an event at Punta Mona is because I want to learn from Stephen Brooks. I wanted to learn what it looked like to build community. What is he doing well and what is he not doing well? Right? Not everything is perfect in Punta Mona, and he would admit it. But a lot of things are. And he's done a lot of things really, really, really well. And a lot of which I'm embodying and bringing forward as well. And so, yeah, it's just been, I don't know. It's a beautiful journey, and mentors for me have been absolutely life changing and saved me from all kinds of challenges and problems. And I just hope that I can do the same, and I can leave that trail of breadcrumbs, digitally, but also very personally and very warmly to others.
Yeah. Something that's been coming up a lot for me lately is the importance of not just working hard on your business, but working hard on yourself. Because for all my life, I grew up in a family that was very hardworking. So my understanding of working hard was waking up early in the morning, going to work, putting in the hours. But what I failed to realize was I was neglecting myself. I wasn't paying attention to my spirit, my soul, or my health. I was putting so much energy out into the world. And only in the last 2 to 3 years have I started to go on this journey of self-discovery. And I now more than ever realize the importance of self-work. And it really stemmed for me from plant medicine. I don't know I think you have some experience as well with healing psychedelics and plant medicine.
Done.
So this for me, it really woke me up, and like, for example, especially through my podcast the other week, I was speaking to a friend of mine called Matt Aris, who's he's a life coach, and he specializes in male masculinity, sexual energy, this kind of stuff. And he really made me look at myself. He made me look at my relationships, look at my relationship with sex and myself and all this kind of stuff. And it totally blew my mind. It totally opened my eyes. Like, I never spend any time whatsoever thinking about my relationship with sex or my masculine energy. I never do. And that's why I've had so many problems. That's why I've had so many recurring kinds of relationships and patterns happening in my life. I think this is something very important, is spend time to think about yourself, where you are, look at your life and become aware of patterns. And why are you doing this over and over again? And I think what you're touching on there as well is working on yourself, taking the time to really dedicate to yourself. So that analogy of going to the gym and spending money, I used to spend a lot of money on things like cars and clothes and weekends away. Now I want to spend money on online courses and on therapists and on plant medicine retreats and yoga retreats and on my diet. These are the kind of things I want to invest money on, because the more you invest in yourself, the more you're going to get back.
I couldn't agree more. I literally, you nailed it. I mean, look, you are the number one asset in your life, the number one investment you can make that outperforms the stock market, that outperforms absolutely everything from a very financial perspective, is in you. But beyond even that, from a spiritual conversation, from a like an embodied man or woman perspective of just being a good, conscious human in many ways, not for anybody else, but for you, the best investment you can make is in yourself. And I honestly, truly believe that surrounding yourself with a really great community intentionally and finding really good mentors is the number one way that you can make those investments. Because again, how many people want six-pack abs, right? Maybe the person you're listening to this, right? As a listener who's listening to this right now, maybe you want six-pack abs. And you know that if you ate more kale and did sit-ups every day, you'd have it to some degree. Now, is there better ways, or can you do this, that? Maybe there's a shortcut, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe. But I don't think it's about that. It's about showing up every day, committing to the identity that says you are healthy, committing to the identity that says you are a farmer or a community builder, that you're a leader, that you're whatever it is. And by committing to that identity and taking a small step in that direction each and every single day, and sometimes massive leaps like an ayahuasca journey or a mushroom trip or whatever it is, that kind of radically shift your perspective on life and your own self and kind of heighten your own self-awareness. Those medicines are so incredibly potent and powerful. And for me, going out onto the farm on a very regular basis and working there full time, as well as working digitally and creating content full time, the balance between those things and the things that I learn in nature, the things that I learn in ecosystems, inform what I do in business. So, even today I was having a conversation about SEO and somebody said, oh, you can like growth hack like this, and we can get you a bunch of backlinks to this backdoor way or black hat way. And I was like, no, I just want to do it organically. I'm focused on the long-term vision of like, I'm planting a fruit tree today, I'm planting seeds today, that I'm thinking about where this is going to be in 5 years. And it's because of that deep principle that I've learned about ecosystems through the farm, through permaculture, through being out there in nature, that I can now embody that in my business. And I'm seeing the repercussions, I'm seeing the benefits, and I'm reaping the rewards and the literal fruits and metaphorical fruits of making those types of decisions for many, many, many years now. And so, yeah, I think self-development and self-work could look incredibly impactful and important. I think your own personal health and the way you treat yourself, the way is a reflection of how you're going to treat others. We all hear the adage of like, don't date a person who's rude to the waiter. Well, what about dating a person who's rude to themselves? And we're all self-critics. We all have that there, but can you deal with that? Can you bring that forward? Are you willing to look at your shadow? Are you willing to admit where you're maybe not being as conscious as you need to be, or that you have life patterns or decisions that you're doing that you're holding up as a way of self-traumatizing, or as a result of trauma that has come in your past in some way, shape, or form? And that trauma can be minute. You might not even realize it, but through, for me, psychedelics, it's been very revealing. But not just that. There's so many layers of that. I've had a coach personally, professionally, for many, many years now. I've done some form of therapy or medicine in many, many years now, self-medications. And that could look like everything from biohacking to cannabis or CBD oil, or, whatever it is. Like, there's so many variations of that. But, I truly believe that you are a reflection of how you treat yourself and your own self-love. And the more you can love yourself, the more love you have to give to everyone else.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And one thing that gets me is I speak about psychedelics quite a lot, and most people I talk to, they maybe have a lack of education or a lack of knowledge about psychedelics. They put them in the same bracket as your recreational drugs, So one of the jobs or one of the obstacles that we face is trying to educate people as to what psychedelics are. And the government doesn't help as much because they make everything illegal, and they just kind of give them all a bad name. Alcohol is readily available, but yet ayahuasca is illegal. It just doesn't make sense. But one of the things that I'm doing, you mentioned earlier on about documentaries, how you were inspired. You watched a documentary a month for a year. Is that right? Or
it ended up turning into 8.5 years, actually. Yeah, it was originally it was a year, but it ended up 8.5 years, and there was like TED Talks and audiobooks and a bunch of stuff. But yes, I essentially watched a ton of them, of course.
Yeah. So I'm kind of similar. Through Educate, Inspire, Change, I was always watching documentaries, always watching videos, and I realized the importance and the power behind filmmaking, So when I had really profound journeys with ayahuasca and plant medicine, I thought to myself, how can I convey this to as many people in the most impactful way? And I thought the best way I can do this is through the art of film, to try to inspire people, because I can talk on podcasts or I can try to preach, but the best way to inspire people is to show them by example. So the way you're doing your farming, the way you're getting your hands dirty in the mud and you're growing your own food, I'm inspired by you. I really am. And I also think that doing plant medicine, if we're able to showcase this to people and show them the transformation, show them the hard work, this is what I'm trying to do as well in this is my personal projects, is creating compelling films around plant medicine, psychedelics, or healing modalities, just to show people what's out there and to also help educate society as to what psychedelics are and the role they can play in the future. So that's one of my passions, and maybe we can combine our passions in some way or form. I would love my vision for a community. Yeah, my vision for a community is a community that has like a center communal area where people are taught about plant medicines, whether it's CBD or psychedelics or marijuana, or whatever it might be, So I'd love to put our heads together and see what we can come up with.
I'm right there with you. I mean, look, as a marketer and as somebody who has learned a lot of storytelling online and supported a lot of entrepreneurs through that, I've promoted DMT, the spirit molecule, and a bunch of documentaries. I've promoted ayahuasca documentaries. I've actually helped launch an entire ayahuasca retreat center, and we did our whole branding and all of their stuff in Costa Rica. I mean, look, I'm right there with you. I think they're incredibly transformative. I can't believe that all of this stuff is illegal. And at the same time, there's ways to change that. And that's like, even what I was mentioning earlier, our Marcus McNeil, who's one of the teachers in Superhero Academy, he used his knowledge of Facebook ads to help a nonprofit organization essentially decriminalize mushrooms in Denver. And so there are tools that go beyond just, direct activism. These tools, these skill sets like filmmaking or meme creation or content creation or all of this stuff can be used in what is really the culture war, right? A narrative war, a narrative problem that we have in our world today. And so I think there's the front lines are there, and I've done a ton of work personally. I'm super happy to co-create with you and share, and I'm very vocal about my favorability of the use of these things. I years ago I was participating in a campaign called Coming Out Green. It was very unheard of to tell people that you smoke weed publicly, so I was part of that. I mean, I think it's incredibly impactful and important. And like anything, it could be abused. Like any drug or anything, I don't see it and I don't treat it like a drug. I treat it like a sacred ceremony. I treat it like a medicine. I understand how the reverence that it has. I understand that even going in these medicines or using these medicines with other people who have used them before is always very helpful, right? So there are shamans or mentors that we can have in this space, that people who know how to do this properly, and so I've participated and had the luxury of participating in that many, many times. I've been the guide for many, many, many people in many ways. And I can say that, I'm deeply, deeply, deeply passionate about it. And I see the journey that it seems to have invoked in you around all of this stuff too. So more than happy to support.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, Educate, Inspire, Change, I started it 8 years ago, similar to when you started, And for the first 6 years of that journey, I built this massive community of over 2 to 3 million followers. But what I realized in the last 6 months is I was lacking that. I would rather have 10,000 core followers than 3 million followers who are just like my content. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I'm really trying to. Yeah, that's why I'm trying to do these podcasts. That's why I'm doing more Facebook Lives. I'm making documentaries because I really want to connect with the people on the other end of the camera. It's so important to me, And the best way to connect with people is to be your true, authentic self. Not trying to do it for publicity or for money, just to live your passion and live your truth and connect with people and then see what comes. And that's what I'm trying to do now. So my invite to you is I'd love to extend my platform to you. So why don't you go on my Facebook page and do a live? You can promote Valhalla Farm, Superhero Academy, and I hope it brings you like a support success. And then, because instead of sharing content with articles and memes, I'm trying to do this more. I want to have people that have meaning and purpose on my platform, engaging with my audience. And I will bring you value, and it will bring me value, and it will bring my users value. So I'd love to talk to you about that after the podcast and get you on soon.
It's funny. I had a very similar thought yesterday, even like through the podcast and the show that I'm going to be doing with my own show, my own podcast, as it comes back to life in the near term future, after I get permits for this house and essentially focus on that, keeping my laser focus on that for now. But in the near term future, I was thinking about even filming segments that are specific to the different audiences of platforms that I know I have access to. And so I actually thought a ton about you and about that. So look, I'm in. I'm 100% excited to do it. I would extend the exact same thing to you with Superhero Academy. You know what I mean? And I would love to, find better ways to share, to be more communal, to be more generous in every single way. And I love doing this. I'm deeply passionate about telling stories. I'm deeply passionate about sharing my experience. I'm deeply passionate about dissecting a headline and how we can be empowered and what we can do with it right here and right now. And I've just learned a ton, and I have so much more to learn. I have so many more mistakes to make. I have so many more pitfalls to fall in, but I also have so many more triumphs and so many more mountains to climb too. And I'm just deeply, deeply, deeply grateful for the journey. I'm deeply grateful for people like you who are also inspiring others to go on that journey and providing the stage and the platform for them either to be the student or for them to be the teacher, and really a bit of both, right? So. Yeah, thank you. I'm honored and I'm super excited, and I've got so much to share and so much more love to give, and would love to make something like that a regular thing.
Beautiful. I have to say, this has definitely been one of the more inspiring podcasts I've done. Like you're an inspiration. You're walking the walk and talking the talk at the same time. You know what I mean? So I'm really honored to have had you in this podcast. Just before we log off and everything, can you speak to my audience? Tell them how they can get hold of you. How can they reach out to you? How can they support you?
Yeah. So before you look to reach out and support me, the biggest thing is if you got to this point of the podcast, you loved it. You love the podcast. So let's be real here. go and give this a like, a comment. Let us know. Don't just be a slacktivist of sorts where you're just paying attention, listening, consuming, and then not giving back. Every single click, every single like, every single podcast review that you're doing on this very podcast is incredibly important for getting this message out there to more people. So you know where the links are. You know where to find me, right? You mentioned Valhalla. You can Valhalla Montreal Superhero Academy. Just Google it or find me online. You'll find all the links, I'm sure of it, right? But at the end of the day, more than any of that, I would love for you to leave any questions that you have in the comments. Anything maybe I said that you didn't like and you want me to respond to, hit me up. I'm super happy. And thanks so much for being, just a steward, somebody who's listening and taking time to consume more than that fast, quick content that we see on Instagram or whatever. So yeah, no, go like and comment, go review this podcast. That's what you could do.
Oh, I love it, brother. What an epic way to sign off. Thank you so much again. And I'm looking forward to speaking again. Yeah. Thank you again.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much for having
me. Educate, inspire, change. Educate yourself, inspire others, change the world. I'm proud to say that one of the first sponsors I have for this podcast is Rhythmia Life Advancement Centre. Rhythmia is a unique and special place to me. It's a healing resort fused with ayahuasca, meditation, breathwork, yoga, and lots of other metaphysical teachings. And they really sent me on a journey of healing and self-discovery that ultimately led to the creation of this podcast. So I really do owe Rhythmia a lot. And if you would like to go there and have a healing journey of your own, please visit them on their website at rhythmia.link/Khan, spelled Khan, or give them a call on 877-835-1806 and receive a free shuttle worth $300 off your trip. For the last year and a half, I've been working on a documentary called Pantera. It's a documentary series, and each series will follow me around a different plant medicine retreat. The first episode, Pantera, Our Plant Medicine Journey Begins, is due to be released in the coming weeks. If you would like to keep up to date with what we're doing and receive the latest updates and releases, sign your name at pantera.film.